out on Vancouver Island, and so that's the time for me. It'll be just after 1 o'clock for many of you. Hello and welcome to our webinar today, a tracking tool for community indicator systems and the Sustainable Development Goals. My name is Mary. I'm part of the Community Data Program team, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. At any point during the presentation, you can type questions or comments for our presenters into the chat box. You'll see that at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. You can also let us know here if you're having any technical difficulties, and we'll try to help you sort those out while we go. We welcome our presenters today. We have Stefan Youngkurt and Kyle Wiebe. Stefan is the project lead on International Institute of Sustainable Development, also known as the IISD, the Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the SDGs, Indicators and Monitoring System, and he's the content editor for the SDG Knowledge Hub. So he's been with the IISD's Earth Negotiations Bulletin Team since 2003, reporting on international negotiations on biodiversity and agriculture. He's worked with the IISD as project officer on energy and climate change, and he was previously the program director and research associate with the Council of Canadian Academies, leading scientific assessments in the areas of agriculture, ocean science, and energy. We also have Kyle, and Kyle's an urban planner who is his experience includes assessing the administration of geospatial addresses to informal settlements in Nairobi with the UN Habitat. He's worked with street food vendors to increase low-income consumers' nutritional security in India. And he's contributing to and leading numerous research projects on food security and homelessness in Winnipeg with the Institute of Urban Studies. As an associate with the IISD, Kyle's been developing an online tool called Tracking Progress, and that allows communities to develop customized online community indicator systems. So we're going to be hearing more about that from Stefan and Kyle. I'm going to hand the presentation over to them. We're going to start with Stefan, and then Kyle's going to take us on a bit of a website tour as he does his presentation. So I'm looking forward to that. So without further ado, over to you, Stefan, and thank you both for being with us.
Thank you, Mary, and yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to give this presentation to you today. Maybe I should start with a clarification I just saw when we're doing the polls. I myself would not describe myself as a high-capacity data user. I've been most of my career been on the end of trying to communicate appropriately what other experts have done with data. So a lot of my work has concentrated on writing in a way that is generally accessible about statistics and about reports that have been published. And as Mary said, in terms of issue focus, I've been working a lot on biodiversity and agriculture, but also on energy. And both Kyle and myself, we started about a year and a half ago working on this project that has existed since 2009, so we're really standing on the shoulders of our colleagues here. That is, yeah, almost a decade now of engagement with the community in Winnipeg, which is where the headquarters of IISD are located. So maybe just a few words about IISD. The International Institute for Sustainable Development is a really international organization in the sense that we have offices in Canada and Geneva and New York. And a lot of our work focuses on what is happening at the multilateral level in terms of sustainable development. So as that, we've been in a couple of projects that are tracking what's happening with the Sustainable Development Goals. And in the recent work that we've been doing, we're bringing those two branches together. So the experience that we had working with the local community in Winnipeg, and also sort of the emerging framework on the international level that the Sustainable Development Goals represent. So I'll take a few minutes to talk a bit about the history of the project and how we came up with the idea of developing the Tracking Progress platform. And then if the gods of technology are with us, I will hand it over to Kyle to do a live presentation of the website and the interface that we've developed in the course of the project. So as I said, we started about in 2009, so almost 10 years ago, with a very simple question that I assume is very familiar to you. How do we know as a community if we're making progress on issues that are important to us and or that we feel are important to our community well-being? And the way that Laszlo Pinto, who was the sort of the initial sort of godfather of the project, presented this is he said communities need a compass. If you know where you want to go, if you've figured out what you want to achieve as a community, you still need to know where you're at right now to be able to chart a way towards those objectives. And that was sort of the initial idea of starting to work with communities around community data. And then what came out of that after a few years was sort of the concept of creating an online interface through which members of the community can access data on key issues that are important from a community perspective, but also embed that data in stories and other information that are important to understand why this is relevant and how this relates sort of to the day-to-day life of everybody in the community. So the initial PEG website, as we call it, like PEG in Winnipeg, was launched in 2013. And I think it had almost 90 indicators that were separated into these 8 themes that you can see here right now. So it was indicators around the built environment, about basic needs, about health, and also it included a very large part of indicators around social vitality. And the website was very, very well received. It was developed in a series of consultations with key community organizations and sort of individual citizens at large. So it really made an impact in the community, but also beyond, and it won several prizes for being sort of a great interface to work with data in a community. And for a few years, it became what we would say it was sort of at the core of sort of a wider community infrastructure for data. So some of the things that we have done since the beginning with this project is to create annual reports. It's a series that's called the Our City reports that every year look at a special issue from a data perspective. To publish indicator sheets on sort of current issues or emerging issues to show what data is available to measure what's happening there, and also to develop some teaching material. So we were engaged with the University of Winnipeg and some secondary education institutions in the city to develop a curricula to actually use the portal to teach young people about how to work with data using examples from sort of their day-to-day life. But after a couple of years, or more precisely towards the end of 2017, we were getting to a point where it became obvious that the cost of running this portal was too high for our partner to keep working with this. And maybe I should have said at the very beginning, we've been developing this with the United Way of Winnipeg. So they've been our partner from the very beginning on this. So it's been a very fruitful and great partnership to work together to develop this. But it came to a point where between the two partners, we were realizing that we needed to find a way to make it less time intensive to run the website, to reduce some of the technical costs, because just updating and maintaining this website secure was becoming more and more costly. But also to make the entire interaction with the site simpler for users. And maybe sort of to be honest about the experience, something that you might have realized from other data websites as well is often you can select many parameters and it looks like there's data on pretty much anything that you can imagine, and then you press go, and after a while the website tells you, well, sorry, we don't have data for this. And the PEG's website was suffering from that very same problem, and some other problems as well. It was becoming slower and as I said, more and more complicated to uphold. So we sat down and said, like, what would be sort of the 2.0 or sort of the next generation of community indicator portals? And some of the lessons learned that we took away from the first years was that probably rather than uh, having a very, very large suite of indicators, it really needs to focus on what matters to people in the community. It needs to be easy to use so that it doesn't necessarily require, high capacity data specialists to run the website. But it also needs to be flexible in order to accommodate emerging issues and things that matter to the community that come up at short notice. So it needs to be able to react to how things are changing. And maybe one of the biggest issues that were changing in Winnipeg was the emergence of the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN, which are starting to gain traction not just at the international level, but also at the local level. So more and more communities are discovering that these Sustainable Development Goals are very useful as a framework or as a way of creating some reference and some external validation to what's happening on the ground. So we were looking for a way to integrate the data and the knowledge that we developed in Winnipeg with sort of our work that we were doing at the international level to track progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. So the result of all those ideas and the development work that Kai was leading was a new version of the platform in Winnipeg, but it was also a tool that allows us now to create platforms like this relatively easily for as many communities as we want. So we call this tool the Tracking Progress tool, and there's the website that's down here, trackingprogress.org, is a place where we have some general information about this. But in essence, it is it's a tool built on open source software. It's built on the WordPress content management system. And it allows to set up new community indicator platforms very, very easy, almost in a matter of a series of clicks if you have the resources available to do it, the shapefiles and so on. And what we did with that was that we rebuilt the PEG website. So we have now a new website that is fully functional that you can access under mypeg.ca. But at the same time, we developed sort of a program around this tool based on capacity building, on networking between communities, and sort of to keep the ball rolling, we have sort of we are aiming to continuously improve this tool that we've developed there. So those three elements are kind of what is defining the work that we're currently doing right now. And at this point, I will hand it over to Kyle, who is going to switch to the actual website and who's going to give you a walkthrough how the website works and how the back end of the website works as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Stefan. So let's see if the technical issues have been resolved here. So I hope everyone is able to see my screen at the moment. Stefan, are you able to preview it?
Yes, I can see it.
Perfect, perfect. And I think everyone will be in the same boat. So thanks, Stefan. As Stefan and Mary mentioned, my name is Kyle Wiebe, and I'm an associate with the IISD. And I've been working closely with this PEG redevelopment that we've been doing over the last year and a half. So what I'd like to do with my portion of the presentation now is show you the new tool through a live demonstration and really kind of highlight how we believe this tool is something that communities of all sizes and capabilities can use to build their own CIS. So as Stefan mentioned, in our experiences, the difficulty in developing a community indicator system wasn't the lack of available data. If you know where to look, there's more data now than ever before. But what we recognized as an impedance to developing and maintaining a CIS was the challenge of updating and managing data and then visually communicating that data to an audience in a useful and interesting way. And there isn't really a shortage of platforms that are built to show and visualize data. But what we found is that most of the tools out there, when we were doing our redevelopment, most of the tools out there required some sort of hefty annual subscription, or they came with features and tools that were well beyond what any community actually needed. And that was mostly because none of these tools were created specifically for the purposes of a CIS. And so if none of the tools out there are kind of built specifically for a CIS, what we kind of found happen, and what happened to us and when we first built PEG, was that we went out and built our own site. And this can create a really custom user experience, but what it often leads to is each community reinventing the wheel, so to speak, and to go through this whole process of figuring out what works and what doesn't work over and over, despite the fact that many communities have tried to do this before. And trying to develop a platform is costly, it's time consuming, it can be really frustrating. So we recognize this issue, and what we wanted to do was develop a tool created specifically for the purposes of a community indicator system. And a tool that was so simple that anyone, despite their background, could use it and maintain it and update it with just a little bit of training. But instead of about just talking about that, I'll actually run through the portal here with you to show you kind of what our final product, or I shouldn't say final product, we're continually adding to it, but what our platform looks like. So what you're all looking at right now is the front end of PEG, or the new PEG as we like to call it, PEG 2.0. And right off the bat, what you'll see here is on the left-hand side is we have the thematic areas that we use to discuss data in PEG. So in total, we have 8 thematic areas. These are the built environment, basic needs, the economy, education and learning, health, natural environment, social vitality and governance, and demographics. And we have these platforms right in the front page of our site because we wanted users to be able to access the data from the main page by just one click away. In our experiences, as Stefan was mentioning, a lot of the data on tracking progress or on other platforms seem to be buried around in different pages. It was difficult for users to access or get to, and we really wanted to bring the data to the forefront of the platform. So if you click on any one of these themes, you'll see a list of all the indicators we have included in that theme right from the main page. You'll also see that for some of these indicators, they have 2 thematic icons or logos next to it, and that's because the platform has the ability to include indicators in multiple thematic groups in case they are kind of cross-cutting. So in this example, active transportation is both in the built environment and in the natural environment. And if we click on the natural environment, we'll see that active transportation is right there as well. I should note that all these themes and their icons are totally customizable. So if another community wants to build an indicator system with a totally different set of themes, they can change these when they set up the site. They're actually not preloaded. You can create all of your own. So now to actually look at some of the data we have in the site, I want to show you what one of our time series indicators looks like. So the indicators for the site are different for each indicator, just depending on the geography we use to discuss it and the data source. But the first indicator I want to look at looks at time series data. So to do that, we'll go into housing starts, which is under the built environment. So here we have our housing starts, which just measures the number of new housing units started in a community. In this instance, we are looking at Winnipeg as a whole. And because we're looking at just one geography over a number of years, you'll see on our x-axis we have the different years that we have data for, and our y-axis is just the number of starts. So on this indicator, we can also hover over any one of the data points and find the number of housing starts. So in this example, in 2010, there were 2,787 housing starts in Winnipeg. Now, you'll also notice that for the indicators, the graph was a default page that showed up, but we also have a descriptions and SDG page for each indicator. So on the description section, users can find important information regarding the definition, why we believe this indicator matters to Winnipeggers, some of the measurements and limitations that we found when developing the indicator, and also the data sources, so users can go and find the data for themselves as well. But if we return to the graph on this time series indicator, we just have the one geography here of Winnipeg, and that's because it's when comparing Winnipeg to, let's say, a national level for housing starts isn't very comparable, just because the numbers will be so different at a national or a municipal level. But for other indicators, we can actually compare two different geographies on the same chart. So to show you how that works, I'm going to go to the core housing need indicator, also under built environment. Similarly here, you'll see that the core housing need indicator is a time series chart. It's census data, so it's every 5-year period. But we have Canada data and Winnipeg data compared on the same chart as it's a percentage. So users can follow along. They can see at Canada, the core population in core housing need was 13.7%, and in Winnipeg it was just a little lower at 10.8%. So this is an example how we're able to show different data on the platform using our time series graphs. But we also have the ability to show data in bar charts and in maps as well. So to show you that, I want to go to a different indicator under social vitality and governance. And let's go to personal safety. So our personal safety indicator looks at the number of assaults, homicides, sexual assaults, and robberies per 1,000 people. On the x-axis, we'll see these are different community names for Winnipeg. And on our y-axis, we have the number of crimes per 1,000 individuals. So in this chart here, we have data in the same year for multiple geographies. So we're able to show that in a bar chart and show the differences between those geographies. But we don't just have this for one specific year, we have this data for multiple years. So on our top right, you'll have a drop-down menu. And you'll see here that these are all the years that we have data for personal safety indicator. So if we go to a different year, let's say 2002, we go way back, we have all this data for the same geographies. You'll also notice that there is a black bar that runs across this table or this bar graph. And what this is the Winnipeg average. So we're not only able to show what the crimes are for a specific area, but we're able to show what the Winnipeg average is. And this allows us to see which communities are above or below the Winnipeg average. And you can hover over top of this graph and see that in 2002, the average number of crimes in Winnipeg per 1,000 people was 12.3. And again, because this geography or this data is available at different geographies, we then see that we have a new tab for the indicator, which is the Maps tab. So we can click on that Maps tab. It's carrying over the same year we were just looking at, so that's 2002. And this is the exact same information displayed spatially for Winnipeg. Again, you can hover over any one of these areas, such as Point Douglas here, and you'll get the value for that area. We can also navigate and go back to view our most recent year, and there we go. You'll notice that as I toggle between years, the legend did not change, and that's because our legend is created by drawing on the range from the oldest to the most recent data. And we do this so it allows us to get a better or more accurate understanding of how data is changing. If we were to just draw a legend range for each specific year, it would be a little misleading when there was color changes. And so this way we're able to kind of show which areas have changed over time. You'll see if we go back to our 2002, there used to be higher crime per 1,000 individuals in Inkster at 13.2. But if we go back to our more recent year, we can see that's dropped to 9.8. What we've also built into this mapping function is the ability to compare two geographies. So what we've done, there's not too many geographies in this instance, so it's easy to hover over. But in communities where maybe you're looking at larger geographies, or if you're doing a global platform and you want to pick out two countries, you can just select the drop-down menu, and we can look at downtown, and let's say Inkster again, and we'll get the 2017 value for that specific geography for the two of them, and we can compare that data. One of the other functions we really wanted to do with this data was make sure that we put information back into the user's hands. And so you'll notice on the map here there's a download geography function. And what that does is it downloads a GeoJSON or shapefile, and the attribute table has all of the information that's on the portal in the table. So we're really trying to give that data back to users so they can kind of manipulate it. They can do a more of analysis and a deep dive with that information. We have the same sort of data downloads available on our graphs, where people can download CSVs or Excel files of the data for all the year ranges or just for one specific year if they're interested. In some instances, this data, or you might be using data on your platform that you have restricted sharing privileges with or isn't allowed to be disseminated or shared. And in those instances, you can just toggle off or on the sharing option for each indicator. Before we move on to showing you how to actually upload your own data, I realized I missed the SDGs tab here. So as Stefan mentioned, we're doing work with PEG to connect it to the UN's SDGs. If you click on here, you'll see which target or which goal it's related to, and then which specific target. And you can click on links to the UN website to get more information about those goals and targets. Before I dive into the back end as well, I'll just say a few other functions that we have on the main page here. So although our primary navigation tool is the themes on the left-hand side, we also have an about page where users can find more information about PEG and its purpose and who some of our collaborators are. You can also find more information about community indicator systems as a whole, why they're important for communities and what benefits they have. We have more information on the Sustainable Development Goals and why we've chosen to connect those to our PEG platform. And lastly, as Stefan mentioned, we do a lot of media and reports and annual reports, and so we have a media library built onto the site where users can go and find the latest reports or any news articles that have been developed around PEG or the data. So now that we've done a bit of a front-end exploration of the site, I want to take you through the back end to show you just how simple it actually is to build out some of these indicators. So to do that, we're going to go to the dashboard or the back end. And this is the back end of the site. Tracking Progress is a WordPress-based site. If you're familiar with WordPress, this is probably going to look quite familiar to you. If you're not, it's just a very popular platform for developing new websites. A lot of these tabs on the left-hand side come default with WordPress-based sites, but there's really two tabs that I want to talk about. They're geography and indicators, and these are the two tabs that are really important for how we develop new indicators and how we talk about data on PEG. So the first of these that I want to look at is geography. So when we click on geography, we get this list here of different geographies, such as economic regions. We have school divisions, communities, neighborhoods, subdivisions, and just Winnipeg as a whole. And all these geographies is the different ways that we talk about data and the different levels of geography that we have data for in PEG. If we click on one of these, such as communities, and we scroll down, we'll see here just a template of a shapefile with no data attributed to it. So these are just the boundaries of the polygons that we use to talk about the different areas. If you hover over them, you'll see the name of the geography. Now in PEG, we already have all the geographies we're currently using uploaded to the site. But if someone wanted to create a new geography, or if a community was developing a new platform, they'd simply go to My Geographies, they'd go Add New. They put in the name of the geography it was, up in the top, select the city, so you can add new cities very easily on the settings page of the site. And then you would simply, once you save that, it would give you an option to upload a GeoJSON or shapefile. and that shapefile becomes uploaded. And if you're familiar with those types of files, you define what you want to have the identifier for from the actual attribute table of the shapefile. I contemplated uploading one with you, but because it takes a little time to render onto the platform, I didn't want the audience sitting around waiting for the computer to do its work. But essentially, if you have a GeoJSON or shapefile for your community, it's very easy to create a new file. And I'll show you what that does when we go to the indicator process. So once you have the geographies uploaded in the site, you can create a new indicator for the platform. So the list here is all the list of the indicators we're using for PEG currently. But to demonstrate how the site works, we're just going to add a new indicator. And I'm simply going to call this test. So the first step in developing a new indicator on the tracking progress site is to first name it, and then second is to tell the platform what geography you're going to be talking about that data at. So you see here, step one is choose associated geography, and it gives us a drop-down menu. And you'll notice here that all the options in the drop-down menu are the geographies that we have uploaded in the Geographies tab. So for our example, we'll just do communities, which is similar to the map that we were looking at on the front end. And once we've chosen our geography, we'll save that associated geography. Now what the platform is doing in the meantime when we're saving this information is it's creating a custom CSV sheet that we can then link the data to. So the next step we'll do is to define what type of variable it is, and this we'll just say we're making an indicator based off a percentage, and we'll save that data option. And now it's going to allow us to download that CSV that we've just created by setting out those different parameters. So I'll hit download CSV here, and we'll open it. Perfect. And are you able to, I hope everyone's able to see the Excel sheet here. And so what this is this is now, or Stefan, can you hear me? Are you able to see the Excel sheet?
Hi, Kyle, it's Mary. Yeah, everybody can see it. It's very clear.
I wasn't sure if I had to share the screen. Excellent.
I know. Sometimes
So
it's weird when you don't get feedback.
I would hate to keep going when everyone was looking at something else. So this is the CSV that the platform has automatically generated. You'll see here there are 5 columns. 2 of the columns have already been populated with information. So these are the actual community names that we have on the community's shapefile. And then we have 3 blank columns. We have year, value, and trend. For our purposes, we'll only be concerned with these 2 blank columns, which are year and value. And so what we're able to do with this CSV now is we are able to connect the information or the data that we have to the CSV file. So in this example, let's pretend that we have some 2017 data for Fort Garry, and I'll put 2017 in there. And then I'm going to give it a random value. So I'll just say rand. Let's see if it likes my thing. So there's a random value between 1 and 100 to show a percentage. And we can copy and paste this information all the way down through all the different geographies we have. So assuming we have data for all of the communities in 2017, we'll post that there. I'm just going to post that information. And so now let's say this is a real data set that we had. We could say these are all of our values for 2007 for this specific geography. Now, what happens is, we're in ideal settings, is you have data for more than 1 year. So that's the instance. Let's say it's now 2018 and we have new data for our theoretical indicator. We simply copy and paste the geographies. We'll put our new year in, paste those years, and we'll put in new values. Again, we're just using some arbitrary values here. And now we have data for 2018 for this indicator. And you can repeat this step as many times as you need it for new data. Now, every time you upload this CSV to the site, it saves the latest sheet that you upload. And so if you, in 2019, get new data, you can simply go onto the platform, download the latest data set. It will have all this information already retained in the back end, and you can simply copy and paste and add your 2018 data in. So it really doesn't require you to go back and start this process all over again. But to show this a little better, we're going to actually upload this CSV. So I'm just going to copy these values and paste them as values instead of formulas. We'll just save that. And we'll drop that there. We'll go back to our system. And now we're going to upload the CSV we created. And when we upload the data, you're going to see here that it gives you a preview of the geography, or a preview of the CSV we just created, so we can go and make sure that all the data is correct. And once it looks correct and you've confirmed it, you can simply confirm upload data. Now, from that simple process, what we've done now is we've input all the information for this indicator into the system, and we're now able to tell it how we want to visualize that information. So in our first graph here, or our first box, we have just paragraph text. This will fill out the descriptions tab on the front end, so you can put whatever information you like there for the descriptions tab. But then we can start to talk about how we visualize that data. So the first setting is it asks us if we want to create a map for the indicator. Because we have this data at multiple geographies, we'll show a map. Once we do that, and unlocks map settings that we have, we can choose from preset different color ranges. They're all colorblind safe. We can set the number of cases we want the platform to make. So let's say 5 different cases. So this creates equal interval breaks of the data sets. We can give the legend a title and a description. And we can also tell it to include or exclude null values in case any data is missing. So once we do that, we can simply save the map settings, and our map will be created. But we don't want to just show a map for this indicator. We might want to show a graph as well. So here we have 3 different options for graphs. In this example, let's show a bar graph because we have multiple geographies. Again, by selecting the graph type, it unlocks the settings for that graph. You could have also chosen pie chart or the line graph, depending on the data you have. But if you go into our bar graph settings, you can select the color. You can then label the x-axis, which will be communities, and the y-axis we'll just say is a %. And then we can set a custom min or max. So for this example, we'll just do 0 to 100 with the %. And we'll call it test up top. And these are all the parameters you need to define the bar graph. So it's a very simple process to go through. If you're using similar x-axes or y-axes, the platform remembers some of those titles. We'll give you the option to just click on them right away, saving even more time. We can also add a description if we want to provide a little more information to the graph, but if we have everything we need, we simply hit Save Bar Graph Details. And now we should be able to scroll down to the bottom, and we can preview what we just made. So this is a preview of all the data we just uploaded on the back end. We hover over, we'll see the values for each one of these communities. Of course, these are arbitrary values. We can just make sure everything's correct. And we can also change the year we're looking at. So that was 2018. Let's see 2017. Also check our values for here. Similarly, we can go to our data graphs, and we can see here that these are the values for each one of those areas and the %. Now, let's say for this hypothetical indicator, we also had a Winnipeg average. Then we can go back up to bar graph settings, and we can provide an average here. So let's just call this average. And we can either set one benchmark that goes across all data points, or we can set each data point a unique average. So let's say in this indicator, the benchmark or the average in 2018 is 50%, and let's say it was 60 in 2017. Simply save those settings. We go back and preview our graph, and now we can see this average come across. So it's 50% in 2018. For 2017, we go back and make sure it works. We have 60% now for the bar graph in 2017. And so just by uploading that one CSV with data, we're able to coach the system into how to visualize that information in a very quick manner. And so as you can see, it doesn't take a lot of time to actually populate a page for the indicator and to visualize that information once you have the data set. So I'll just save this here. And the last step we have to do once we create an indicator is we have to connect, or we connect it to the SDGs on our site. So on the right hand side, you'll see all the SDGs, goals, and targets. You can simply click on a goal and a target, and that will link it on the front end to that SDG. All the SDGs are pre-loaded into the site, so all you have to simply do is click, and all that information will be connected. And then we also connect it to whichever thematic area we have on the front end. So let's say this was a basic needs indicator. We could simply click on basic needs. If you're also related to health, we could click on health as well. And that indicator will now be nested under those two different thematic areas. If for some reason we wanted to create a new thematic area, all we would have to do is under indicators, we go to themes. Here's a list of our themes and the icons on the back end. You could simply just add a new theme. You can give a description if you like. You would upload SVG as an icon. You select a color and you'd hit add new category, and you would have a new theme that you could nest it under. So it's a really quick process to develop these themes as well in case they change at all. So that is the basic tutorial on how to quickly upload and create new indicators and geographies on the site. I'm happy to answer any questions about how the platform works. But in the meantime, I'm going to pass it back to Stefan now to talk a little bit more about what our plans are with this portal and how we're moving forward with it. So Stefan, I'll try and stop sharing my screen here.
Sorry, Kyle, just before you do that, it's Mary here. There's a couple of questions that have come up. One of them was, what of the data are you using through the PEG site that is from the CDP?
It's a great question. So let me turn the site. I don't have the list in front of me that we're using exactly, but in Winnipeg at least, you'll see on the, or you'll remember on the geographies that some of those were StatsCan based geographies. But the communities that we've been looking at and talking about here, those aren't StatsCan drawn communities. Those are locally defined boundaries. And so our local chapter of the CDP custom orders data for those geographies from StatsCan. And so almost all of the data actually that we use to discuss information in Winnipeg at the community level comes from our CDP here. So it's, if I were to ballpark it, I'd say about 40 to maybe 50% of our indicators are discussed at the communities level, just because it's a common way for Winnipeggers to reference their community. I'm seeing if there's some other questions here. Sorry, did I lose you, Mary? Or
that's okay. Yeah, no. And then the other question is, does WordPress store any of the data? Sorry, where does WordPress store the data? Does it all stay in Canada or does it cross borders? I assume there's a security issue here.
Yeah, no. So we all the information is like hosted on either the developer's server or it can be hosted on your own server. And that information is stored, so essentially on your own server. I don't think WordPress actually maintains that data or has it on their own site, because I believe the way it works is, I'm not an expert on server storing issues, but the data is stored on whatever server the platform is stored on.
Okay, and then there's a question from Joanne. She's just wondering, as a lesson learned, so after you've been working with this, are you happy with your theme areas, or do you see that you would change them if you were doing them fresh now?
I think we've been generally quite happy with the thematic areas we've chosen. As Stefan mentioned, we're standing on the shoulders of our colleagues who have gone through this process before. The thematic areas were developed through extensive community consultation. They've also been refined over the years. So our social vitality and governance used to just be two separate indicators, social vitality and governance. We didn't have a lot of indicators under governance just because of the lack of data. And so we've merged those together now. We've also found it important to include demographic information in the platform. So the demographics is a new thematic area that we've just uploaded this year. But what's been really nice about this site, as I kind of quickly touched on at the end, is it's very simple to create new thematic areas. We don't just want to include them and remove them constantly, because we want users to kind of have a sense of familiarity when they come to the site. Mm-hmm. But when communities are developing new indicator systems, it's quite simple to change those to what's relevant to them. I think for us, where we're at now, we're extremely happy with it. We've merged social vitality and governance. We've just put out the demographics, and we find these have been really great kind of catch-all thematic areas for all of the data that we've been discussing. So, reflecting on it, I think we're quite happy with where we are. But again, it wasn't just something we, kind of closed our eyes and chose 8 thematic areas. It's been a long process in the making.
All right, great. I think that's us caught up on questions for now. So
fantastic.
Oh, sorry, there's a quick one from Matt K. So what is the difference between communities and neighborhoods?
It's simply just 2 different geographies. 2 different ways. So neighborhoods in Winnipeg, I can show you on the back end how they look, but neighborhoods are much smaller geographies. It's just the vernacular we use to talk about those geographies in Winnipeg. It's not the same across all communities. But we were just looking at a map of communities, and if we look here at neighborhoods, you'll see, scroll in, there's far more neighborhoods in Winnipeg. So it's just depending on what data you have. At the moment, we're not using neighborhoods just because data was only available for a select few indicators at the neighborhood level, and we wanted to have more of the data at the same geography.
All right, and there's a follow-up question from Matt again. So he's saying, very cool, especially for a WordPress plugin. Is there a reason there are maps for some indicators and not others, like LICO?
Sorry, is there a reason there is?
So Matt's asking if there's a reason why some of the indicators have maps and some don't. So for example, I think he's saying that LICO, there's no map for LICO.
Yeah, so if we look at LICO, so this indicator, we just have the LICO data available at obviously the Winnipeg CMA level and at the Canada level. Because it's just at the Winnipeg level, a map wouldn't be visually appealing because we would just have the one geography. So to develop choropleth maps, which are the types of maps that we've developed on the platform, those colors used to fill in a choropleth map are created by drawing kind of equal intervals between a range of data. But with just one geography, there is no range. So you would just be staring at an outline of Winnipeg with no relative color difference. So that's why where we don't have maps, you'll typically find the data is provided in these line graphs. because line graphs allow us to show data for one geography over multiple periods of time, whereas the bar charts and maps show multiple geographies for one period of time, and then you can search different periods of time and look at each geography for that year. So I hope that helps in clarifying that a bit.
And there's a question from Emily about the stories that go along with the indicators and where you would include the stories.
Yeah, it's a great question. So if we go back to our front page here, if we have a story that's kind of is new, it's breaking, we on the WordPress-based site, you're able to create these little widgets. So we can link a story right to the front page of the site, such as we did here with our PEG reports that came out at the end of last year. So we could link a news story there. We could also link a news story in the media section. So on the back end, it's simply just upload a new story. You can upload that story and it's here. But you can also quite easily go to the dashboard. And let's look at an existing indicator. So high school graduation rates. This is the description section for the high school graduation rates. We go why this matters, and we could plug in a link to the story as well on the site. So you can get it from the description. You can also, if you wanted to add a map or a bar chart settings, there's the descriptions here. You could provide a link to a story here as well. There's options to insert and hyperlink text to different stories. But typically, if we want to get attention right from the main page, we would create a widget with the story right off the bat, and that story would be linked to our media page.
Just waiting a second. There's a follow-up from Emily coming. Great. And then Kyle, for you, there's a couple of comments from City Calgary and from Matt as well. So in our CDP data, you should be able to have more LICO data for your smaller geographies.
Fantastic. We're always looking to update and include. I should say one thing we're working on right now is being able to show both line charts and bar charts at the same time. So something like LICO, we've chosen the line graph here, but we're in the midst of developing a function, so you can scroll down and you could have this information also as a bar chart and the geographies. So it's good to know that data is out there, and we should be able to include it very soon. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Awesome. Okay, I think we better keep moving. Feel free to keep typing those questions in, and we will get to them. But I think we're heading back to Stefan.
Perfect. So I'll just stop sharing there.
So Stefan, did you want your presentation back again?
Yeah, if you just could put it back on. I have just 2 more slides. Yeah. Talk a little bit about our plans. So yeah, thanks Kyle for the walkthrough. I always find it fascinating to see how easy it is with the tool to create new indicators. So as I mentioned before, one of the reasons why we wanted to have a tool like this was to make it easier and mainly less costly for other communities to replicate the same work and also build indicator portals like this. Also to make it, especially to make it available for smaller communities who often don't have the resources to have, to fund a longer term project like this. So our long-term vision of what we would like to do is once we have a critical mass of communities that have established a website like this, to develop a network of communities that have these community indicator sites. Because what we've seen is that working with these sites has a couple of sort of benefits in terms of the data work, so to say. On the one hand, what we assume or what we hope to see is that once several communities use the same data language or the same way of visualizing data, it can create this feeling that you're not alone solving these issues, but there's other communities trying to look at similar issues as well, and then you can start, comparing to each other. Maybe have some healthy competition around, which community has made the greatest progress in the same time frame or so. But maybe more importantly, to use what other communities are doing in order to move the needle on those indicators as an inspiration, and then to see whether it makes sense, to link up. Maybe if you're a coastal community somewhere in the Atlantic and you find a community somewhere at the Pacific coast that has found a brilliant solution to something, to create those linkages across distances and to see how you can work together. And coming back to the Sustainable Development Goals, we do see this as a way also to create partnerships. So that's SDG number 17. So to develop linkages not only with communities within Canada, but maybe also across Canada, across countries, with communities in other countries, and to add to the sort of the idea that the Sustainable Development Goals are implemented from the bottom up, a way of measuring and reporting from the bottom up as well. So where we at in that progress process, we have right now, as we said, PEG is the main website that is fully functional right now, but we've also started working with some other communities in Canada. So right now there are 3 websites that are about to be launched. One is in Cumberland in Nova Scotia, another one in Bridgewater in Nova Scotia, and one in Peterborough in Ontario. So these are 3 communities that now have websites of the same type as in Winnipeg, and that are just working towards finalizing them and then making them public. We've also used the tool to create a global portal where you can look up the official data from the United Nations on the world's progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is a website that looks, and it's not quite done yet, so we're about to launch it maybe in a few weeks. But if you look at it, you will see that we're right now where the themes are, we have put the 17 SDGs. So you can click on each of the SDGs, and then you find underneath them, you find the official international indicators that are being used to measure progress at the global level. And this is data that's coming from the UN statistics database. So that's another way of basically translating and visualizing that global data in the same through the same interface that we can use at the local level as well. And another project that we're working on is we've been working for several years now with the Community Foundations of Canada to prepare the data for the vital signs reports. So the community foundations are a network of, I think, close to 200 community foundations that are, and some of them are participating in this program that creates every couple of years a report on sort of indicators of community vitality. And what we will do in the next 2 years is to develop an adapted version of the tracking progress platforms that those communities can use to receive and manage the data that they're going to use in the vital signs reports, but also then to use the front end of the website to communicate it and make sort of the publication and visualization of the data that's contained in the vital signs reports an ongoing process and make it more interactive. So to get more value or more impact out of the work that they're doing for the vital signs reports anyways. And then we're just starting up a project in the Caribbean. So there's several islands where we will develop portals probably at the island scale. So we will go to Jamaica, Barbados, and St. Lucia to work with them. And then just recently we've added Trinidad and Tobago as sort of a one-off project there as well. And we are working with Canadian communities that are interested in building their own websites, sort of in one-off projects. So if you're interested in learning more how you can get your own track and progress site, you can contact us, and we can work with you towards sort of a small project that would establish that and see how we can create a community indicator system for you. So bit by bit, we're spreading out and trying to see what the interest is in different parts of the world to build those websites. And what we're hoping really to do is at some point towards the second half of this year to officially launch a network of communities that have this ability to track progress at the local level with their own indicator portals. And then to develop sort of additional resources, ways of linking together, maybe we'll also sort of build capacity of how to link data and storytelling and all these kind of things. So these are our plans, and if you want to find out more, here's, as I mentioned before, the general information page, trackandprogress.org. The way we're setting up new websites is you can basically just plug in your name, the name of your community or your place, and then you can get an URL, trackandprogress.org or trackandprogress.ca. And yeah, if you have questions, you can contact myself or Kyle. And there's also a general inquiry email that I will type into the chat box. So thank you very much. We will stick around a little bit to answer questions. Yeah, as I said, if you want to find out more, don't hesitate to contact us, and we'll be happy to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Stefan, and thank you, Kyle, for touring us around the website. It's really great to see the back end working and so smoothly, which I think is encouraging for folks. So there was a question about the future website. So Stefan, will that be linked off of the trackingprogress.org website, all the future projects that are coming?
Yes, we will do that at some point. That there will be maybe even a map or so where you can see the different places where track and progress sites exist, and then you can just quickly click on them and link to them.
Yeah, so that would be very cool.
That would be one way to enter it. We're also working with Alliance 2030, which is a website that's run by the community foundations on sort of progress on the SDGs in Canada as well, and we're thinking about making it possible to access the sites through that website as well. So there'll be different pathways to get to the website to the sites.
Great, which is really nice, right? Because we want to sort of make all these cross linkages between everything, so that we sort of have a better view of what's going on and create a stronger network. There was a question from Matt about whether this is available to cities for free or if there's a specific licensing regime that goes along with it.
Yeah, so using the Track and Progress tool itself is free. So what we're doing right now is we're offering sort of any city or community that's interested sort of a small project where we assist in establishing the site and sort of providing some training and some capacity building. So just so that sort of the community can get going until they feel comfortable managing the site itself. Right now, that goes sort of in the ballpark of between 3,000 and 5,000 Canadian dollars for one site, depending on the size and the number of geographies that we upload and so on. And then we're thinking about transforming this into a network where basically all the recurrent costs that we have for hosting the site and for ensuring that the tool itself is always up to date with the latest WordPress software and so on, will be folded into a membership fee that shouldn't be more than maybe $200-300 or so per year. But the tool itself is open source software, so it's not there's no license fee or anything that needs to be paid.
And Kyle, I think this is a question probably more for you from the city of Calgary, if you sort of look up a little bit farther. So Calgary says, we have some data that we'd like to show geographically and would be able to toggle between different categories. So for example, if you had the immigration information show up on a map, would you be able to do a drop down and then toggle between, say, economic immigrants and refugees? Could you do that all within one map?
So at the moment, you're not able to do that all within one map. I don't know, Mary, are you able to provide me with the sharing options again?
Sure, I sure can. And
Show
bring the
you.
website back up.
Excellent, yeah. Great. So I'll answer kind of two of these questions at the same time. So this is the SDG site that Stefan was talking about. You'll see that the SDGs are now the thematic areas on the side, and all the SDG indicators are on the left. So this is the platform we're working on, and this is what it looks like when the SDGs are your themes. But to actually look at, oh, I've lost my peg. When you actually want to look at an indicator on the map, the way we have it set up is that you would have to navigate between the different indicators to look at that information. So instead of being able to toggle between different years and look at it, you'd have to go back under the theme and click on it. But it still is very easy to compare because you can see as you go through these indicators, it takes you right to the map as well. What you can do, however, is you can kind of manipulate those maps on the back end when you upload your CSV. So you could upload different information on the same indicator if you wanted to look at comparisons. So to show you an example of that, let's look at commuting patterns. So you could stack different types of information all within the same graph. So active transportation, public transit, automobile use, we all have all of these information on the same graph. So that's one way that you can include multiple indicators on the same chart. But the primary way to show different indicators is not the toggle, but rather just navigating back through the thematic areas to the indicator. I mean, the system is quite flexible, and we're always open to developing new tools and functionality as communities request it. So there's always the opportunity to custom some of the work. If whoever is from the city of Calgary is interested in discussing that more, I'm actually based in Calgary and would be happy to have a more in-depth conversation about that if they're interested.
That might be a good way to answer these questions. Yeah, because I think we're getting into some more detailed stuff. There's one more question from them. If they wanted to access the plugin to better understand the capabilities, would they be able to do so, or do they need the training and support option?
Sorry, could they expand on the question? But if they want to access the plugin to look at how it works a little more?
Have a better idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we would be happy to arrange a meeting. We could just go on Skype and share screens, and you can take a look at it. We also set up temporary sites that we use as demonstrations to parties that are interested in taking on new platforms. So we could grant limited access to that site, and they could explore a bit about the functionality on the back end as well.
Yeah, we don't offer the self-serve option yet, but it's certainly something that we consider in the long run. But it's just more to, sort of to learn how to actually do it and what kind of support materials we would need to provide and how to set up our network.
Yeah.
That's great. And Kyle, do you want to share your contact information just in the chat box?
Yeah, absolutely.
That'll be right there for Calgary, and for anybody who else would like to maybe directly contact Kyle if you want to talk more about your particular situation, how it would work for you. All right, there it is. Yeah. All right, I think, oh, there was one more question from Matt, and I hope it means something to you because it means nothing to me. So Matt says, is it on GitHub or other code repository?
So it's open source software. We don't have any of it on GitHub at the moment. I mean, we just have the one custom plugin created at this time. We're using mostly just existing open source software. But what we are moving to is we want to become more of an open platform, open source. Stefan mentioned like we offer the training for the site, but because it's a WordPress site, when we move towards more open software, people will be able to develop their own plugins on GitHub, and they could just code those in to the back end of the site. But what we're doing right now is, as we develop these platforms, one of the real benefits of this kind of network that Stefan was talking about was we use any funding we have to develop new technologies, and because they're all based off of, they're all child sites of kind of our main platform, all the new technologies that are developed are shared to all existing tracking progress platforms and anyone else that's coming on in the future. So you have access to all of this new technologies and developments that are coming through. So theoretically, people could build out and use their own from open source sites like GitHub. But at the moment, we kind of have a little more control just because it's sort of somewhat of a new experience that we don't want to kind of just lose track of it yet. We want to be able to manage it and make sure everything's running smoothly. But we're working towards being more open source for sure.
Okay, that's great. And there's a couple of questions from people who missed parts of the webinar today, but as long as it's okay with Kyle and Stefan, we definitely have a recorded version of the presentation, and we have the slides that we can share with everybody. So if I can get the permission from Kyle and Stefan.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. So yes, Martin, and I think there's a couple of other requests already for copies. Absolutely, we'll have the information, and we'll definitely follow up with you. As long as you've registered for this webinar, you'll get the follow-up information, and we will do our best to keep you updated through the community data program and let you know what's going on within the SDG world. And so you can have some updates there. But please feel free, follow up directly with Kyle or with Stefan if you want to take your work a little bit further on this or have a few more questions for them. And I just want to thank Kyle and Stefan. This is wonderful. It's really nice to take the time and do the presentation and sort of get to see this inside track of what's going on. And hopefully this is really encouraging to some of the folks out there who will manage to make this work for what you're doing as well.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Mary, for the opportunity. I think it's great that we were able to speak to the community, that to your community. So we're looking forward to following up and to some future interactions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mary. We're always happy to share our labor of love here, seeing how we can help other communities.
I'm glad to hear it. And thank you everybody for attending today. I appreciate your time and your interest, and for all those who participated in the chat box, we appreciate it, and your questions are always useful for more than you. So I definitely appreciate that participation level. So thanks everyone, and just check your email for follow-up after this, and we'll get you that recording and let you know what's going on in the SDG world. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.